There is a tendency even today among some of us to project the solutions of all our problems into the future. This may be termed as a pie in the sky when you die kind of theology. While it is true that till the coming of Jesus, projection into the future alone made sense, after his coming, what must spur us on is not only the future, but the present and all that it offers. This is why it is understandable that Zephaniah, writing probably around 640 to 609 BCE, promised that God would preserve a remnant. To this humble remnant or anavim belongs the promise of a secure future. They shall pasture and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. This oracle announced the future realization of an ideal. However, in the case of Matthew, who is writing after the death and resurrection of Jesus, the secure future of Zephaniah is first present in the person of Jesus in a unique way, and secondly, is also in the future. This means that the beatitudes that Jesus pronounces at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount do not merely describe something that already is, but also bring into reality what they declare. They are a declaration of who disciples already are and who they must continue to be. The Sermon on the Mount begins with the 9 Beatitudes, called "Blessed are the poor in spirit, who have surrendered self-will and self-reliance and every other base of security to welcome the reign of God. Also, blessed are those who are gentle, mourners, and those who hunger and thirst for righteousness or justice." These are the basic dispositions of the believer who accepts his or her needs before God and his or her openness to receiving those gifts. The second group of 4, which speaks of the merciful, the pure in heart, peacemakers, and those who are persecuted in the cause of justice, seem to reflect the attitude of humans to one another. These identify with Jesus in his person and in his mission. In what many consider the 9th beatitude, Jesus speaks to his disciples directly. These are blessed even in the abuse and persecution that they will encounter because of their association with Jesus. In our country today, in these challenging times, the Beatitudes are so very true. It is as if Jesus is speaking today and asking us to stand firm in the midst of all kinds of persecutions, never to give up, never to give in. The key feature of blessedness is that it involves living a deliberately chosen and cultivated sort of life, which does not get involved in the power and violence of the world, and which, because of this fact, makes the ones living it immensely vulnerable to being turned into victims. That is the entire of the ethic as taught by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. If we then turn to the end of the eschatological discourse, Jesus' last discourse in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, just before his passion, we find something similar at work. In the famous passage of the Last Judgment, the judgment is defined not in terms of belonging to this group or that group, of belonging to this dogma or that dogma, of believing in this creed or that creed. No, the judgment is presented in terms of the human relationship towards victims, those who hunger, thirst, the naked, sick, or imprisoned. Those who are rewarded are those who, whether or not they know anything of the world, which is blind to its victims, and have reached out to help them. It is here the crucified and risen victim, who is the judge of the world and to the world, is judged in the light of its relationship to the crucified and risen victim. For Matthew, the arrival of Jesus and his proclamation of God's kingdom create the conditions by which the world can be changed. The promise to the poor in spirit and those who are persecuted for justice that the kingdom of heaven is yours might better be translated as on your side or for you. The dispositions and actions praised by Jesus provide an alternate vision to contemporary destructive attitudes and trends which are so very noticeable today. The Beatitudes generate trust in God in difficult circumstances, not simply enable us to endure hard times. None of us can avoid the traumatic experience that life so frequently presents. In Africa and Asia, millions of our fellow human beings suffer disease, poverty, and the effects of war and natural disasters that some of us have never experienced or even imagined. The challenge of the Christian faith is to accept and live a sustaining relationship with God in the most trying circumstances. The Beatitudes define the way that Jesus himself lived, even to the point of death, as a rejected, religious, evolutionary, and unjustly condemned criminal. The spiritual power to live the life of the blessed comes not through our most noble human efforts, but through the Spirit which God gives and the gift of the grace that the Spirit gives. Paul realized this when he said that God knows and loves the foolish of this world and will use them to shame the wise and the strong. Are Jesus' praises in the Beatitudes and Paul's declarations really too much for us to believe? Will we dare to live out the Beatitudes today?